dear Hector, finally decided to take a bit of exercise on the historic pilgrim's way to Santiago. Incidentally, the handmade boots from Jermyn Street are bearing up beautifully. Do you know, though, it's jolly solitary being a pilgrim. Gives one time to reflect and ponder the quiet beauty that is Galicia. Now, you can forget the quiet solitude bit. I seem to have arrived in the middle of their fiesta season. Actually, they seem a brilliantly friendly bunch with a penchant for bagpipes. Very Celtic. But, going back to the pilgrim bit, do you know they wore a scallop shell to show fellow travellers that they were on the road for Santiago? And, as a gastronomic pilgrim, I think it bodes well for some succulent seafood delights. I can't wait! Once upon a time, actually early in the 9th century, a star shone down on a field and revealed the mortal remains of St. James the Apostle. A great cathedral was raised, and from then on it was known as Santiago de Compostela, St. James of the Starfield. Brilliant. This giant censer was created to freshen the air, fouled in former times by smelly pilgrims who slept unwashed in the galleries. So, 600 years ago, the priests here designed this holy flying giant air freshener. Well held, sir. There is a feeling, almost a spiritual feeling, an ancient feeling about Galicia. The writer Graham Greene came here to rest and take stock of the world, to this very monastery, in fact. He stayed for a few weeks, probably had some wonderful meals here, and converted to Catholicism. Buenas tardes, señor. Actually, you can't just turn up at Osera Monastery and take over their kitchen. Well, not that easily. So my chum, who you'll meet later, Moncho, a brilliant cook, by the way, arranged for me to cook for a few of his chums. That's a lovely drop of local wine. Anyway, Clive, into my kitchen. In fact, it's not my kitchen, it's a 15th century monastery kitchen which I've borrowed for the day to cook what must be one of Galicia's signature dishes. It's a very simple dish. It's the kind of food that the monks have been eating here for hundreds of years, and famous visitors and others seeking refuge here might have eaten too. It's hake cooked with potatoes, red peppers, green peppers, garlic, olive oil, and paprika. Now, quick spin around the ingredients, Clive, and by the way, it's nice to have you back again, because at least you know what you're doing. Fresh hake, red peppers, green peppers, parsley, onions, potatoes, garlic, olive oil, and of course, I'll just bring this up to you a bit, Clive, the lovely paprika. Very important ingredient to Spanish cooking. So, without any further ado, a bit of chopping has to take place. Slice the red pepper into big pieces like that. Okay, pop it onto a plate in readiness, along with some green peppers already done. Chop up a good piece of fish. Nice big cutlet per person. One of them, two. And by the way, back up to me, please, Clive. The essential ingredient of this dish is actually freshness. Because it's such a simple thing, if the fish isn't perfectly fresh and the vegetables aren't straight from the garden, it just won't work properly. And remember, as with all fish dishes, they should always be slightly undercooked. Right, back with the chopping. So you've got through those. Now, my dear Clive, this is a tricky one, because I'd like you, in a minute, as soon as I've crushed this garlic, like that. We use the garlic in very big, very big chunks, because the Spanish are very fond of their garlic. What I've got to get you to do is to spin round, if you wouldn't mind, to the other side of the stove there, where, and once you've got there, thank you very much indeed, I'll just have a quick slurp, where over here I have a pot of water simmering away with some onions in. Stay on it, please, because what's going straight into that are these lovely pieces of fish. Okay, poach those in the water, flavoured with onions, and a little bit of smashing sea salt. Stay with it, because overcoming next, red and green peppers go in there as well. And that whole lot simmers away for, probably 10 minutes or something like that. Excellent. Whack the pot of oil onto there with some garlic, add more garlic, let that sizzle away. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Okay, that's enough sizzling, Clive, I think. Over to the main thing here now. You can see the fish is virtually cooked. The peppers are soft and tender. That one isn't quite, ought to go in a bit further. And another part of the dish are these potatoes, sliced and boiled in salted water with bits of onion, which form the base of the whole thing. So get those in. I don't know about you, Clive, but back up to me just for a second. I'm feeling a bit rusty, you know. It's such a long time since I worked with you. I don't feel I've got my usual fluid sort of self. So I think perhaps what I should do is have the slightest of slurps. Because, you know, when in a crisis, and when kitchens get hot and dusty, and when you've travelled a long way, and you're in a strange place, speaking in foreign languages, with hosts that you've never met before, I do mean hosts, and they are quite holy hosts, it has to be said, you know, you need a few seconds to compose yourself. Excuse me just a sec. Right, okay, Clive, on with the sauce, because you must make it before the garlic gets too burnt. The garlic in the olive oil, and then the paprika stirs into that. Just gently like that. Now, not too hot, otherwise it will burn, so pull that off the heat completely. Well, I'm in serious trouble here. Sorry, we have to admit that sometimes in a cook's life things go seriously wrong, and I have absolutely ruined the sauce.
Senor Floyd has ruined the sauce.
Are you there, Moncho? I have to call an expert. I'm in serious trouble.
Tienes que dejar que enfríe la jarra, dejas que enfríe y luego después con una cucharita se le echas por encima y está perfecto.
Ah, gracias, yo comprendo. What he's saying is, where I went wrong was, I was trying to stir the whole thing up to make a liaison of a sauce, you know, like you might do with flour or farine or something like that. In fact, all you've got to do, he says, is let the garlic settle, let the paprika settle, and then just spoon off the flavoured oil. Now, Clive, I need a really good close-up as I move this over the thing. Really good close-up. You see that pure, cloud-free oil, but just flavoured by the wonderful paprika and the garlic. Then you just pour that over the fish, okay? Remember the trinity of vegetables, the peppers, the garlic, and the onions. Only the older and sick monks are given meat or fish to eat. The rest have to rely on produce from the garden. So what do they think of my dish? Galicia on a plate? So how do you like the food?
Well, really, I find it wonderful, really. I congratulate you. Yes. But what I find really curious is to eat in Galicia, Galician plate, to make it for an English cooker. This is really nice.
If I could just ask you, what is the spirit of Galicia?
I think is there something different in Galicia about the rest of Spain, is that Galicia is a part of that old culture, Celtic culture. It's like a block with England, French, German, you know, and France. But Galicia is a rest of Celtic civilization, and so it's normal, you can find normally, you know, blonde and blue-eyed people, normally, tall and strong people, much more than the rest of Spain, and that is a very peculiar difference from the rest of Spain.
Every year, for as long as anyone can remember, and probably before that, the locals ride out into the hills to round up the wild horses that graze freely. Now, the object of the exercise is to brand the young foals, but in Spain, the practical side of the exercise is naturally turned into a fiesta, a holiday for the whole village. It's also an opportunity for the young bloods of the area, the agarradores, to get noticed by their chums as they attempt to dominate these frantic creatures. Anyway, this is a food program, not a human studies class, and this is pulpo al faria, boiled octopus snipped into bite-sized bits, sprinkled with olive oil and cayenne pepper, and the Galicians are very fond of it. The afternoon air is full of delightful smells. Carcasses of goats split open gently cook on smouldering fires made from vine roots. This method gives a unique flavour that no man-made oven could ever give. It's the sort of cooking that El Cid or Charlton Heston would have had before doing battle with the Moors. And suckling pig, something the Moors would never have dreamt of eating, cooks to perfection. The sweeter aromas of all this food heighten the senses, and this afternoon we'll see the making of local heroes, the breaking of incompetent fools, broken bones and dented egos, before the horses are released back to their, no doubt, beloved hills. I can never separate the look of the countryside from the food I eat. After all, what goes into the pot is only a result of history and climate. But in Galicia, people seem to have hedged their bets over the centuries. Even their precious granaries that keep their maize and potatoes have a curious mixture of pagan and Christian symbolism. At one end of the granary is the rock that represents the Celtic belief in the earth and its bounty, and at the other, the cross. Here, both are equally valid. There is a thread of Celtic gastronomy which stretches from Galway to Galicia, via Wales, via Ireland and Scotland. And Brittany too. All of these places have a stew, whether it's an Irish stew, a Welsh cowl, a Lancashire hot pot from the Welsh taken up there, or the Breton dishes of beans and mutton and ham. There is one here too. It's called a cocida. Okay, that is the end of the historical gastronomic lesson. Clive, coming close, quick spin round the ingredients, if you please. First of all, potatoes. Follow my hand. Chickpeas soaked overnight for 24 hours at least. Cabbage, remember the Irish bacon and cabbage. A real chicken, proper free-range chicken. Shin of beef, sausages, cabbage, and finally, a pine cone. Because in the days when this kind of dish was made to take to the fields, they didn't have a Caligas burner like I've got. They'd build a fire of pine cones. Anyway, there is one other thing essential to Celtic cookery, which is the pig. And stay there because I'll bring it up to you. You need a really good leg of cured pig soaked overnight for 24 hours. Right, Clive, follow me, dear boy. Into our pot here, close up, that's some chickpeas we've already had cooking for about 40, 50 minutes, something like that, okay? We then put our leg of pig in, which goes in like that. We have a slight problem because my scissors haven't provided quite enough water. There, that's better. It's worth pointing out, this isn't a dish for a loving couple. This is a dish for a field full of workers, okay? Right. The ham's in, the chickpeas are in. The next thing, which takes a long time to cook, is the shin of beef. Clive, follow that in if you will. Shin of beef and the bone full of marrow to give unctuous flavour to the whole thing. Right. Now, it's not easy to cook a 4-hour dish in 3.5 minutes on television. Please pretend an hour has gone by, the ham is cooked a little bit, the beef is cooked a bit. We now put the next most tender ingredient in, which is this lovely free-range chicken. Claws and all, because that produces gelatin, which enriches the stock. Chicken goes in. Thank you very much. Now, back up to me, Clive. Another hour has gone by. Clever, isn't it, this television business? And then you pop the old tatties in, so beloved of the Irish and the Celts the world over. Tatties go in. Oh, I hope it didn't splash you, dear. Sorry, I did. So sorry, dear. Hope I haven't smeared you. Is that better? Good. Right, imagine another 40 minutes to allow the potatoes to cook has gone by, and you add the cabbage. So beloved of the Celts the world over, I repeat again. And then, because we have here in Galicia these wonderful smoked, spicy sausages, and as the man said, what's the difference between these and an English sausage? The thing is meat. These have gotten, the other ones haven't, but they're trying to ban them in England, aren't they? That goes in as well. Okay? It now simmers away for 4 hours. I'm going to have a little snooze, possibly under the vines, possibly read a book, maybe improve my adjectives. Instead of saying brilliant all the time, I might say, God, it's a smashing dish. Back on the pot. It's very fitting that the vines here are held up high from the damp ground by granite posts, a sort of Stonehenge of viticulture, because without the height the grapes would rot, instead of turning into a fruity and fresh-tasting white wine that could well be the envy of all Spain. The monks from Germany in the 12th century first introduced the Albarino grape, and I for one found its delicate, flowery, rain-watery aftertaste quite stunning, especially with the local sheep's cheese and a good book. So after hours of gentle simmering, this robust dish is ready. It's as far from Nouvelle cuisine as you can get. Even roast beef and Yorkshire pudding looks delicate. Even fay next to this substantial Galician stew. Best eaten in the open air with lots of chums watching a big fat sun sink, as only suns can, below the Albarino vineyards. Dear Hector, you'd really like the food here. The seafood, or the mariscos, as we in the know say, are superb. And, as every restaurant seems to have a piano, you'd like it very much. Each window is like one of those lovely Victorian oil paintings. And as you know, I'd love to be a painter, capturing the goldy pink of these large Atlantic prawns, or the fresh silvery sheen of these sardines. Oh yes, you'd love it here. These, don't be alarmed, are pethebes, and they're really weird. They cling to rocks and remind me of tiny, scaly elephant's feet. Simply boiled, they're quite delicious. In fact, there's not much you wouldn't like. Freshly grilled sardines and amejas, sweet little clams that live in profusion on the sandy beaches. It's quite good, this music, isn't it? This is Paco, my latest chum, and he's tasted it all. His favourite is clams in a garlic and fresh tomato and onion sauce, simply thickened with flour and local white wine, and it's one of the classics around here. And yes, the symbol of Galicia. Fresh scallops seasoned with sea salt and flour, then simply fried for 3 minutes in olive oil. Fresh pimientos from the village of Padron. It's surprising how superb they taste when they haven't been wrapped in cling film and left under the supermarket lights for a week. You see, the essence of Galician food is simply fresh produce. And Hector, with your love of boats and things nautical, you'll be jolly impressed by these little chaps. They call them dornas, and according to a chap I met in the pub, they go back to the days when the Phoenicians used to trade along this coast. Not only did they extend the gentle art of boat building, they no doubt brought vines as well. Clever people, aren't they, the Phoenicians? You just can't escape from these fiestas. And by the way, don't try letting off your rockets in this way unless you're completely mad, of course. You know, probably every day in Spain there's a fiesta somewhere, no doubt celebrating the glorious victories of Christians over Moors, fishermen praying for bigger catches, farmers for abundant crops, and no doubt restaurant owners for more bums on seats. Anyway, this is one of me bravely going where no cook has gone before. Home for millions, yes, millions of mul, mussels, or mejillones. Brilliant word, that. Clive, when you finish playing Hans and Lottie Hass, could you come up to me, please? Because I want, and do be very, very careful. It's very dangerous here. Because I want to tell our people, the customers, where we are. We're on a mussel rig, not an oil rig. They don't have those over here in Spain. They have mussel rigs. Because on this part of the coast, they provide 90% of the mussels that the Spanish people eat throughout the country. And that's a lot of mussels. Anyway, come round here and do, for God's sake, be careful. We've don't want you falling over. It's a very rickety place. Now, mussels, and the other thing they love very much here are clams. So I thought I'd cook, and if you see the boys over there, that's hi there, guys. Thank you. Excellent. Salut. You see, that wasn't rehearsed, I promise you. That was a genuine, spontaneous reaction. And talking of spontaneous reactions, it's time I had one too. Anyway, I'm going to cook a dish of mussels and clams, and one of the essential ingredients of Spanish cookery is sweated down onions. Clive, close up on the pot, please. This is about half a pint of best olive oil, a couple of pounds of onions, and they've now been cooking in there for about 20 minutes. And you can see, if you get really close in there, Clive, that they are really translucent and soft and splendid. Back up to me, please. Right. Next phase of this wonderful cooking sketch is the clams themselves. There we have the clams. A few clams in there. Okay, so stay there, Bert. Stay. Right. Then back up to me for a second, if you wouldn't mind. The other thing that's very important in Spanish cookery is paprika, this lovely red powder, and in Eastern European cookery as well. But the Spanish paprika is the sweetest and the best. So, with no further ado, back down to the pot. A good load of that in there. No wonder they call this, sort of, I call it, the sunshine coast. Splendid red of the paprika, the golden onions, right? Anyway, the next brilliant thing we're going to do is chop up some garlic, because the director likes chopping shots. He's always hoping I'm going to cut my fingers off, you see. So again with Spanish cooking, it's not that refined, so they like to have their bits of garlic in fairly hefty chunks. I think that's enough chopping, Clive, don't you? So we'll pop that into the pot. It's in there. And then the star of our little show today is in fact what we're here for. It's the merry mussels. And I just happen to have caught some. There we are. A splendid bag of the finest Spanish mussels, tied with a nautical knot, which you just unleash like that. Take out the... By the way, if you hear any explosions going on, it's not people shooting us, although I know some of you would quite like to. It's fiesta time here, and there are explosions, there are bands, there are fanfares, because this week here in Galicia is a celebration of what is good about life, which is fish and wine. Right. Now, Clive, back over to the pot. Now, you see, close up there, the clams are beginning to open. I put those in first because they take longer to open. Now we put the mussels in. And you couldn't get any fresher than this. Right. That's the mussels. Stay there. Stir those round. Now, just to recap, back up to me, please. We have a load of olive oil, about half a pint, a couple of pounds of onions sweated down for 20 minutes, the clams for about 5 minutes, the mussels and the paprika. And finally, now into that goes, stay with me, follow me, do the best you can, some fresh tomato sauce into that like that, a couple of bay leaves, and back up to me, please, Clive. If only I had the lid, I'd put it on for about 20 minutes, but I seem to have left it on the boat. So close up on there and get me out of trouble.
Stupid me, it was there all the time. Anyway, along with the mussels, clams and oysters also thrive in Galicia's Rias. Now, a ria is a sort of lowland estuary, and the Romans, who had a highly developed food sense, harvested the wonderful bounty from these shores 2,000 years ago. And this is an old Roman cemetery, a compostum, being excavated at the moment, but subsequent generations have also used it to bury their dead. But you know, wherever the Romans lived, worked and died, you'll find the ubiquitous oyster shell. I think that's enough archaeology. Back to the mussels and clams and tomato sauce. The Romans didn't have tomatoes, by the way.
There we are, dear boy. I
Hola.
don't speak any Spanish, but that's...
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Siéntese.
Nada.
So,
Can I have
se
a
vio,
look,
¿no?
please? So, what do you think?
Está bien. Están riquísimas. Cheiran muy bien.
Any fear of a translator at all?
Este es un manjar propio de reyes.
Anyway, who needs an interpreter? Paco's saying that this food will satisfy anyone, a humble working man to a mighty politician. And it also looks so good, it will please the eye of an artist.
Un plato tan a la gallega como es este. Está muy bien.
I think he likes it.
So, my dear Hector, my gastronomic foray is nearly complete. You know, this trip has reinforced my belief that religion, art and cooking are all intertwined, running as in one single thread through all of our lives. And, as my chum Paco on the boat said, the dish of mussels was good enough for any man, whether he be a fisherman, an artist or a politician. So, I thought I'd cook at Moncho Villa's restaurant for the top man in these parts, the president of Galicia himself, Senor Fraga, one-time ambassador at the court of St. James, a noted gourmet, a spirited sportsman, and in fact, a gentleman and a scholar.
It's going to be a very, very fair competition. We've got one fish dish and one meat dish. And in fact, this is a perfectly normal coin.
And that?
Yes, okay. So it's heads for the fish, tails for the beef. So we just spin that, and then we get on with it. Oh, that's it. You're doing the beef. No. It's honestly fair. English rules. Anyway, so you do the beef. Thank you. Excellent. You're a good man. This is a recipe that Moncho explained to me about 5 minutes ago, by the way. So it's very much a Galician dish. Salmon goes onto the bed of onions and garlic and the olive oil. Seal it on both sides. As usual, fish should always be quite lightly cooked. Doing very well here, Clive, actually. We are doing very well. Next, we put in some clams. Okay, clams go in. Then the local wine, which is terribly nice stuff, actually. Like that. A little bit of fish stock. Now, if you can't, to back up me just for a second, Clive, as usual, there are some very good preparations on the market these days for fish stock, if you can't be bothered to boil the heads and things down yourself. So a couple of tablespoonfuls of that into there. Some parsley. That. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. What's going on here?
No, no pasa nada, nada.
Nada?
Es el
Es
vino.
bueno,
Es bueno. Es
Pero
el
vino.
vino, el alcohol.
Excellent, excellent.
Oh.
Shin of beef, marinated in garlic, fried in olive oil. Little
No
onions all
problem,
around
man.
it. Look at my one, though. Well, I just get something else, Clive. Thanks. And now I just add into my sauce, stir a little bit of mustard into that. Prepared Dijon mustard. There, we let that bubble and simmer for about 3 or 4 minutes until the clams open, and then either one of two things will happen. I shall become a Knight Chevalier of Spain and become, you know, a president or something like that, or a duke or a baron, or I'll be dragged away in chains and thrown into some castle and left to rot forever and a day. Back on the pot, old bean.
The salmon will only take a few more minutes, but Moncho's marinated beef, once browned in the wine, olive oil and garlic, goes into a hot oven for about an hour. But by the way, it's very important to marinate this shin of beef, about 3 pounds, for 24 hours. Not 6 or 12, but 24. Otherwise it just won't work.
Are we supposed to start?
So now for the moment of truth.
Let's see this salmon. Very good.
He liked it. He really did. And wanted instantly to make me Minister for Food and Culture. But sadly I had to decline.
Very well cooked. And I think this combination of sea and river is very good.
Good, I'm delighted. Muncho's shin of beef is absolutely fabulous. Remember I told you that he seared it in hot fat, placed it in the oven with the marinade, and just left it there for an hour or two. But it's so tender and so delicious. It's like the sort of stews you get down in the south of France as well. The cowboys down there in the Camargue make this kind of thing. It's, you know, it's that lovely, warm feeling of something simply but lovingly cooked and lovingly prepared. It's absolutely magnificent. It's muy bueno.
Gracias.
This is a queimada, and every serious Galician meal ends with this amazingly alcoholic brew. It goes back to the days when people really believed in witches and evil spirits. And if you want to do this at home, then you need a bottle of marc, that's the spirit distilled from skins of the grape, lashings of strong red wine, fruit and sugar. Let the alcohol burn for 20 minutes or so, stirring constantly. The result is designed to keep witches at bay and give you the most monstrous hangover.
That is not
A ver, digo, Moncho, esta era un poco fuerte, pero que
Claro,
llámalo.
pero es para
Es para lo que es.
I think by the time we've had a few of these, it'll be very difficult to say to the President of Galicia and Moncho that it is a wonderful drink. It does remind me of that stuff we had up in the Orkneys, which is, of course, another Celtic bastion of severe heavy drinking. But this, with its sort of marky taste, the grapey taste of the wine and the fruit and the sugar, it is, well, it's got to be the, you know, the fuel of the 90s. It really has, the rocket fuel of the 90s. It's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. It's really good, isn't it?
I hope it is good, yes.
Oh,
But next time we will have more time for doing it.
well, I mean, just to
This
finish
one
drinking
has
this.
been a very quick or fast queimada, which certainly I don't approve.
No.
But for the way of doing it,
Bring me some woad and some maidens immediately.